So we've talked a little bit about the pros and cons of solar and wind, and you've talked about solar as being the backbone of your system. What are some kind of decision things you need to go through when you're considering solar? Are there different types of solar?
Yeah, there are three kinds of panels. There's monocrystalline, which are the polka dotted ones that you see, almost black, very, very dark color. There are the polycrystalline panels, which are that real shimmery fish scale kind of blue from edge to edge of the panel. They have the advantage that they fill the entire space of surface area of the panel. They are a little bit less efficient, especially in higher temperatures, than the monocrystalline panels because the crystals aren't as pure. And finally, the up-and-coming star of the solar industry, not quite there yet, are amorphous panels. These can be made through film deposition techniques where they're essentially spray painted onto a substrate instead of grown as giant silica crystals. They can be put on a flexible backing so you can roll them up. They can be made into siding or roofing shingles, or they can be glued down to a metal roof. You can put them on the roof of your car. However, they're nowhere close to as efficient as monocrystalline at this point, and they fade. Unlike a monocrystalline or even a polycrystalline panel, an amorphous panel will lose approximately 20% of its power output in its first 5 years. And after that, the degradation levels off. It doesn't really get much worse than about 20%. But the advantage, we hope, is that as more amorphous technology becomes available, and it's so cheap to make when you're just spraying it down instead of growing these huge crystals and then slicing them like salami, it will be so cheap to make that you simply install more of them to make up for their inefficiencies. And you can install them anywhere, so you can install more of them without taking up a lot of space. So sure, they don't work as well, but if you can put twice as many of them on your roof for the same price, go for it. You'll still come out ahead. So that technology has a lot of promise for making solar mass available and everywhere. You can put it on the decks of ships, you can put it on the tops of cars, you can build it into your windows. So that has a lot of future, I think. But right now, I would stick with the polycrystalline panels from a reputable manufacturer. There are also a lot of fairly dodgy solar panels coming in from no-name manufacturers, some of which are actually setting people's roofs on fire. Yeah, they're not very well welded together. Go with a name like Sharp, Sanyo, Kyocera. Who are the other ones these days? Siemens was taken over by Sun, or by Shell Oil, I mean. Any of the big, BP makes solar panels, so any of the big name recognizable manufacturers I would recommend going with. Price per watt on solar has come down by almost 50% in the last 5 years, and I would expect that trend to continue.
Do you know what it is roughly?
These days it's running more than $3 but less than $5 a watt. It was almost $10 a watt when I bought it.
In May of 2000.
About 9, yep.
Okay.
And so we're talking about below $5 an installed watt now. And panels have gotten more energy dense. That is the same size panel that I'm running out there, 2 feet by 4 feet roughly, which is rated at 135 watts, is now putting out 200 watts. Manufacturers have gotten so much better at squeezing extra wattage out of the same surface area that you can get a more powerful system for roughly the same price and taking up the same amount of surface area as you paid for 5 years ago.
It seems like another thing with solar that you have to consider is how you want to mount them. I noticed with your system, you have them on a pole, and I've seen other systems where they're located on the roof. What are the things you think about when you decide how to mount them?
We're in a snow area, so it's useful to be able to get out there and clean snow off of them, especially if you're depending on them to charge your batteries in winter. In Arizona, that's not a problem because it doesn't snow. If you're grid tied, it's not a problem because, so what, you're just not putting power in the grid. You don't want to be crawling around on a roof in a Wyoming winter with a broom, trying to clean the snow off your solar panels so that you can run the toaster. I would recommend, even though it takes up some room, mounting them down on the ground. Solar panels up on a roof can also create tremendous amounts of wind loading. They're mounted on racks that are raised slightly above the roof to let water run underneath them. And the wind gets under them and starts bouncing them. And even a pretty well-built roof deck can kind of shake itself to pieces from that additional wing-like wind loading of solar panels up on a roof. And I just don't like having anything on my roof that may punch holes in it and cause leaks. So I would recommend putting them down near the ground. You can get mounts that actually sit on the ground, and they can tilt seasonally to follow the sun's angle. Or you can put them on pole mounts, which put them up 6 to 8 feet above the ground. Not a whole lot of gain there, but
do they stay a little cleaner when they're mounted up farther off the ground, or not so much?
I think so. I think that's why
Dust.
people, dust and sandblasting. Eventually your glass will just get scratched from dirt blowing against them. Our pole mounts are actually trackers. They not only tilt to follow the seasons, but they rotate daily to follow the sun's path across the sky.
So they do that automatically? Do you program that in, or?
Nope, these don't even have a motor in them. They just slosh liquid back and forth like a giant daisy. And just like a sunflower or a daisy, a heliotrope, they just wake up in the morning, turn to the east, and follow the sun's track across the sky during the day. One moving part, very simple. Hasn't broken yet. It's the only thing that hasn't broken. But that gains you about 25 to 30% in the summer when the days are long and the sun's path across the sky is very long. During the winter, tracking mounts gain you almost nothing because the sun just follows a short, flat path across the sky. In terms of economics, right now I would say save your money on trackers and add 2 extra panels. You'll get more power out of them.
If you have multiple panels, and you don't have trackers, is there advantage to basically when you initially install them, putting them at different angles?
Some people put them in a V to catch morning and afternoon light. Probably you're best off to face them just due south, because for every hour you gain by tilting the east ones to the east, you lose an hour when the sun goes to the west. It's probably simpler to just do a straight across setup.